Hello, friends. For the last 3 weeks, I've been doing live presentations on Facebook Live to my Leadership for New Managers group. For today's Thursday Thought, I decided I'd share a few clips from these presentations. If any of these topics or ideas resonate with you, check out the Facebook group and consider joining. Anyway, enjoy the clips. Talk to you soon. So when you think about this statement, it's actually one of the hardest things to accept, or it can be very hard to accept if you're not inherently proactive, because a lot of things in our society, and particularly if you watch the media, everything is someone else's fault. I think one of the biggest opportunities for us as a society is for people to take personal accountability. And so if you buy into the statement, you want to know, well, what is actually true about the statement? We look at this two-circle model, and anyone who's read Covey's 7 Habits would be familiar with this, where the outer circle is the circle of concern. So this is everything that is affecting you in your life that you're aware of, but you have no influence over. So that's the outer circle. And then the inner circle is the circle of influence. So those are the things that you do have influence over, that you can impact and affect with your behavior, with your actions, even with your thoughts. In fact, I've kind of taken the liberty of adding a third circle to the model, which is the very center, which I call the circle of control. So not only can you influence this, you can actually control it 100%. And what is in that circle? Well, the circle is you. And that gets back to the number one thing on the launch countdown, which is one thing to focus on, which is you. And this is why it's so critical, because it's you is at the center of your whole world. And you are the only thing that you have absolute control over. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to what happens to you. It's a very powerful thought. And again, it takes a high level of proactivity to really embrace it and accept it as being true. So the goal for today is to give you some practical tips that you could implement today, meaning like immediately. So we're just going to dive right in. I often use this analogy or metaphor for work, especially when I worked in the retail space. This was kind of analogous to what everyone's typical work experience was like. There's always way more work to do than there is time to do it. So I used to say, it's like pouring 10 liters of fluid into a 5-liter container. And, it doesn't fit. There's always more work to do than there is time to do it. And so what ideas can you come up with? Well, let's get a bigger container, or maybe go to work somewhere else that has a smaller jug or less work to do. I personally tried that, and guess what? No matter where I went, there was always more work to do than there was time to do the work. So basically, you got to give up on those ideas. And the lessons I've learned over the years is 10 liters of fluid doesn't fit into a 5-liter container, no matter what you try or what you do. So the moral of that story is just give up on that idea that you can get all the work done. It's never going to happen. And once you decide and accept that is reality, the pressure's off. But the key is to capture the correct 5 liters of work. So whatever 5 liters is spilling over has to be the least important 5 liters. And the most important 5 liters is the stuff that gets done. And those 5 liters are what we call your priorities. And a way that you get at that is implementing some time management strategies that we're going to talk about. So we've been busy over the last 2 weeks since we started this. This is just a snapshot of the posts that happen after each presentation, in between the next presentation. So in week 1, we talked about paradigms, the concept of so what, now what. So when you have an insight or learn something new, it's great, feels good. Hey, that's a cool new tip or new thing I just learned, but so what, now what? What are you going to do about it? This whole notion of all frustration is a function of expectations. I'm going to talk about this a little bit today too, because my business partner Vadim and I just launched an app, and we have a hot audience that we're tapping into through a relationship that I have with somebody. And we had all these grand expectations, even though I think we felt like we tamped down our expectations, and it still came up short of what we were thinking. So a little bit of frustration and disappointment, but again, it's not because of what happened, it's because there's a gap between what we're expecting to happen and what actually happened. The next paradigm, if you think the problem's out there, that very thought is the problem. From my favorite person of all time, Stephen Covey. And, again, like as we're evaluating what's happened with our launch, what can we do differently? It's about us. It's not about the customer or the market or whatever. And then the last one from last week, insight plus action equals results. So, it kind of ties back to so what now? It's great to have insights and come up with new things, but in order to get a result, you actually need to take action on it. And then that kind of translated us into week 2 on time management, which is really how do you, it helps you take action if you can plan and put it into your schedule and so on. So the first one was looking ahead at those big icebergs that are coming. This Sunday's Father's Day. We've got Canada Day coming up, which I talked about last week. My 20th anniversary is coming up. But when you start looking out far enough, 4 to 6 weeks out, every week in your schedule, you'll see these things coming. If you have big things going on at work or in your personal life, the sooner you get visibility to them coming your way, the easier it is to navigate through those obstacles or challenges or opportunities. The next one, organize and execute around priorities. And this visual is all about, just accepting the reality that there's always more work to do than we have time to do it. So by organizing and executing around priorities, you make sure that the stuff that you're capturing in your cup. So I use the metaphor of a 10-liter jug pouring into a 5-liter cup. The 5 liters that are spilling over should be the least important and not the least associated with any of your priorities. The stuff that you're capturing and doing should be the most important. And in terms of how do you decide what is a priority? Well, here's my little checklist that I like to use. So 1, is it important to your boss? Is it important to someone else who is important to your boss? Because often those two things are tied together. Is it important to your goals? Is it important to your team? Is it important to you? Things that check those boxes are the things that should be priorities. Anything that doesn't check any of those boxes is part of that 5 liters that should spill over and not get done. And then the last thing was the whole notion of big rocks. And the example for myself this week was I realized I hadn't really been getting my workouts in. So I put them in my schedule yesterday morning when I did the post. And then lo and behold, at 3:00 came around, I looked at my schedule and it was time to go work out. And I went and rode the bike and did some weights and I felt great. I'm a little sore today and I'm sure I'll be a little more sore tomorrow, but I got it in my schedule again for tomorrow. And I'm going to keep doing that. So if you haven't watched the Big Rocks video by Stephen Covey on YouTube, I implore you, I beg you, go and watch that video. It's worth the 10 or 15 minutes that it'll take you. Again, if any of that interests you, feel free to join the group. Love to have you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Now go unleash your potential.